Hello and welcome to Theology Thursday. One of the challenges I find when I read the Bible is that I tend to kind of look at it with a classic Hollywood approach. Here's what I mean by that. In a classic Hollywood movie, we have someone who is clearly the good person, someone who's clearly the bad person. So Snow White is good and stepmother's evil, like that sort of thing. The same in Cinderella. The stepmother and stepsisters are evil and Cinderella is good. And we have a tendency to like to kind of see it that way, to read characters as flat. They're either really good or really bad or whatever it is. I mean, this is one of the things that makes Star Wars so popular. Darth Vader's evil, Luke Skywalker's good. The Empire's evil, the Rebellion's good. You know, that sort of thing. And so we kind of tend to gravitate to movies like that. And traditionally, that's the way it is. The problem with that is that's not the way life really is. Yes, there are people who are just pure evil. They are. History has them, and it's frightening when those people find themselves in a position of power, like Pol Pot and Genghis Khan, people like that. I mean, they're evil. But there are people who are really, really, really wicked people. And there are people who are, nobody's purely good. We know that. The Bible says there's none good, no, not one. There are people who are, they're good people. They're moral, they're upstanding, they contribute to society. They're basically good people, at least in the way they behave and live their life. But we have a tendency to want to kind of put everybody that way when we read the Bible. So when we read the Bible, what we tend to do is to see people as either good or bad. That's it. And so what we end up with is when we read people in the Bible, they either become the hero or the villain. And that's it. And that's all there is. The Bible, on the other hand, seems to go out of its way to make sure that we know that the heroes are seriously flawed. I mean, a number of David's issues come to the surface. The Apostle Paul has a very quick temper. He's unforgiving. We're not taking Mark. An argument arises between him and Barnabas. They are splitting up. Peter, who is the leader of the early church, the Bible seems to go out of its way to show us all the mistakes that he makes and how often he puts his foot in his mouth. I mean, the Bible's just full of these. And I want to say that because I want to look today at two people that unfortunately have been characterized as one or the other. And you are one or the other. And we read them flatly without seeing people as complex. And sometimes they do some good stuff and sometimes they do some bad stuff. We tend to, and by the way, we do the same thing in politics. If we like the president, we tend to think they can do no wrong. And if we don't like them, we tend to think they can do no right. And we don't seem to be able to step back and give a much more honest and fair judgment. And the reality, you and I are like this. We have our good points, our bad points, our strengths, our weaknesses. As a matter of fact, oftentimes you go for a job interview. One of the things they'll ask you is, could you share with us some of your strengths and then some areas for improvement? They don't ask, are you good or are you bad? Are you going to be an excellent worker or a horrible worker? It's not like that. So we know that there are some positive things you bring to the table. We also know there's some areas where you're not as good and proficient. And so we need to see people a little more 3D. So two of the characters we run into in the Bible that people have a tendency to pigeonhole like this, as being just this is them, are Mary and Martha. So in Luke chapter 10, in verse 38, we read this brief description. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. The Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Now, there is some debate over what it means that she's troubled about many things. Is this just a reference to she's trying to put on this big meal with lots of items, and Jesus says, look, just one thing. Like, the peanut butter jelly sandwich is fine. Just a bowl of soup is good. We don't need a 5-course meal kind of thing. So some take it as that. Others say, Martha, you're worried about all kinds of mundane things, but Mary is concerned about spiritual things. And so I've heard it said over the years about, she's a Martha. That's the lady that likes to work in the kitchen and helps to clean things, and they take care of all those things. We need Marthas to take care of the mundane stuff, and we need Marys to take care of the spiritual stuff and all, as though somehow they're just very exclusive. You're going to be one or the other. And so if you're concerned about the mundane stuff, like meal preparation and setting the tables and decorating the building and all that other kind of stuff that happens so often, well, then you're a Martha. But man, if you're in the Bible study and you lead a ladies' Bible study and you lead a ladies' Sunday school class and you do all these kind of things, man, you're a Mary. And so that's not fair to Martha or to Mary, and it's not fair to people in church, because you're not one or the other. And I'll show you why. If we go over to John chapter 11, I'm not going to read the whole chapter because it's a long chapter, but it involves the death and resurrection of Lazarus. So Lazarus has died, and Lazarus has 2 sisters, you guessed it, Mary and Martha. And so he is the brother of the 2 ladies that we encountered in Luke chapter 10. So Jesus takes about 4 days to get there, to Bethany where they were located. And in verse 17, we read this. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. And many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to the kitchen and made him dinner. No. It says she went and met him. But Mary remained seated in the house. So Martha doesn't prepare a meal, but that's what Martha does. No, Martha goes out to see Jesus, to meet him. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Now that doesn't sound like a woman who's only worried about what's going to be served for dinner, about taking care of the physical and mundane needs. This is a lady with tremendous spiritual and theological insight. We can learn a lot from her, not just about making dinner. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. So her theology is right. She's sharp. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection of life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ. And the word Christ is the Greek word for the Hebrew word Meshach, which is Messiah. So when she says you are the Christ, she's saying, I believe that you are the Messiah, the anointed one of God, the Son of God who's coming into the world. Now I ask you, does this lady sound like someone who's only concerned with taking care of making sure that things are clean and things are organized and that dinner is prepared and that the silverware is provided and we have everything, taking care of all the mundane details? It sounds like a woman to me who is very spiritually mature. So I think again, we have a tendency to want to paint. Martha takes care of this area, and Mary takes care of this area. But you find Martha here doing really what you would expect of Mary. All right, Mary's just back in the house sulking. She doesn't even come out to see Jesus until verse 28. Now, when he had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here, and he's calling for you. When she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. And when the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Well, Martha's already said this. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And then we get the shortest verse in the Bible, John 11:35. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, how I loved him. Some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also kept this man from dying? So what we find here is Mary says the exact same thing that Martha did. So when we try to categorize people and make them just flat, like there's just this, I think we do them a disservice. There are people who, because of their personality, that God has given them, because of the spiritual gifts that God has given them, do oftentimes gravitate to taking care of details, to making sure that all the things that are needed for an event to happen actually happen, who make sure that, the donuts are out on a Sunday morning, make sure that coffee is ready on Sundays at church. They're the kind of people that serve in the hospitality committee, if your church has one of those, or they serve in the kitchen, or they're the people that show up for a work day at the church to help clean and organize classrooms and things. I mean, that's, we go, oh, well, they're Martha, that kind of thing, and as though somehow that's all they can do. But the reality is, Martha, yes, was too concerned about dinner. But that doesn't mean that that's her only concern. Martha shows a tremendous amount of spiritual depth, spiritual insight, biblical understanding in her interchange with Jesus in John chapter 11. So we need to be careful about just kind of making people, well, this is them, and that's like all that they do. They can't do anything else. The reality is that people are multifaceted. There are lots of elements to them. And so we need to see people in their depth and their breadth, and we need to see people in the Bible this way. And we also need to see that people in the Bible with tremendous spiritual insight, spiritual depth, theological understanding, like Martha shows here in John chapter 11, can also get sidetracked sometimes. They're not perfect. But it does make you wonder, if we didn't have Luke 10, the story of Mary and Martha not happy that Mary's not helping her cook, if all we had about Mary and Martha was John chapter 11, most people would assume that Martha was the one who was more focused on spiritual things, and that Mary was much more self-centered and was wrapped up in her own grief rather than a commitment to Jesus that was shown by Martha. And that would be just as bad a summary as well. So be careful about making people in the Bible the hero or the villain, good or bad. They're more complex than that. There are good things about them, John chapter 11 with Martha, and there are times when they fail, and that's good for you and me, because God uses people that sometimes get it right, but also sometimes get it wrong. So I hope this encourages you and helps you to see people in the Bible a little more three-dimensionally, and also people that that serve the Lord, to see not only, they do this, as though that's all they do. It is possible for people to show a variety and a multitude of ways of serving the Lord, just like we see with Martha. So God bless you, and I hope you have a great day.